let's go to the defensive side of the football. Talk about the trenches on that side. Now, when it comes to the defensive line, the word wow comes into mind. What a difference a year makes under Gerald Chatman. Some quality of play with a change in the coaching staff on that side of the ball. Gerald Chatman comes in, and hey, by the end of the season, that group was playing oh so well. And Sean Spencer on the way out. Gerald Chatman takes over, not a heralded name, but comes in, and by the end of the year was a force to be reckoned with this group. So he came in with a plan from day one. As he told us in the press conference on Tuesday, just quote, establishing the mentality, just the order and how we do things, how we work. I think it all starts with the mindset first with any player, but specifically with defensive linemen. And I remember going back a year ago when he was on the field for the first time in spring practice, it was noticeable. And there's a loud voice out there. There's a guy that's really getting after it, and that's Gerald Chatman. And he's challenging his defensive lineman over and over again. And I remember, if I remember right, it could have been fall camp, but it maybe spring camp. But like emotions get the best of the defensive lineman. But you can just tell it was a mindset. That mindset he's talking about. You got to be nasty to play SEC defensive line football. I mean, it is brutal. It is brutal out there, and it was good. So good to see at the end of the season that it was Florida's defensive line that was laying the brutality out there. I mean, it was a group that they were really controlling games. I mean, you can really see how the mindset shift paid off for that Florida defensive line. I mean, I think in the end, it kind of just formed a tight brotherhood between those guys on the defensive line. It just really took to the coaching style of Gerald Chatman. I mean, there was a lot of the same guys that were under Sean Spencer, and it wasn't just these guys were a year older, so it made them play better. No, I think it was a mindset Gerald Chatman brought in. If Sean Spencer was still the defensive line coach last year, I think we saw enough before that where I don't know if we were getting that. I don't know if the switch flipped. Now, don't get me wrong, they had their struggles to the beginning of the season, just like the whole team did. But I don't know if they ever would have got out of that with Sean Spencer still leading them. Gerald Chatman comes in, and I think it took some time. And you'll hear him kind of talk about it a little bit, but that mindset, it finally took over. It finally clicked. When you look at the strides they made in 2024, his first year in Gainesville, it's pretty remarkable with the way they were just controlling games at the end. In pivotal moments, just controlling the game. Let's hear more from Gerald Chatman.
Caleb Banks, I think it's first off, I'm looking for him to continue to grow as a man, as a whole person. Besides the football piece of it, I really just care about him, as a person in his life, and then just continue to develop his leadership. Like I said, just all around person, all around man. I think that's going to be huge for him. And then obviously, having a guy like that who started to play. Reach a peak at towards the back end of the season last year, is getting him to do that from day one and then be consistent throughout the whole year, and that's a challenge. And so for him, the whole mentality of it is like, hey, look, this is not just a walk in the park. This is not just, hey, you come back and you're that guy. You have to work to be that guy. You have to work to be that guy that we've seen at the tail end of the season. And it's going to take for you to work your craft. It's going to take for you to take care of your body. It's going to take for you to prehab. It's going to take for you to be in the film room like we started from day one, right? And working the technique and fundamentals. It's going to take for you to play with relentless effort and discipline and toughness. So, it's never playing defensive line is not just like, hey, you can go out there and just do it. Like it's a process to doing it. It doesn't matter if you're Caleb Banks or it doesn't matter if you're a freshman coming in. So I want Caleb to continue to grow as a man, and I think he has a great future ahead of him. And I do believe he's going to do it the right way. Jamari, man, is a special kid. He's a stand-up guy. He went through his adversity and last year in camp. So I think it's a blessing to just have him back out there. He's one of those impactful guys, just his presence amongst the group, having him there and working, and the guys seeing him work. He has that type of impact on other guys, on his teammates. So that alone, is huge, just having him out there. And then it's always a blessing to seeing guys be able to come back from injuries and be able to run again and move around again, man. So, especially those bigger guys, it's really tough. It's tough on them, So it's really exciting to have him back out there, and he's sticking to his process, and and it's important to get him to just understand, like, hey, stay with the process. Don't get discouraged. I know you want to be out there doing everything right now, but it's part of the process. So it's great, man, having him out there.
What are next steps for Makai, and what are you seeing? He's going to factor pretty big, I would think, the nose.
Yes, Makai is doing a great job. He's a smart kid. He's a tough kid. I expect him to have a big role, going forward. He's getting better with the technique and fundamentals. It's always great to have a guy like that you get from very start, from day one, as a true freshman. And then, he worked his way into being able to play, his first year and get some playing experience. And so that's very valuable, because it's not like we got a guy that it'll be his first time going out there playing. I mean, he lined up and played versus Georgia. He played in Kentucky. He played in those meaningful games. He played versus LSU. He played, in those, tough SEC games. And then he was around older guys. So he also had the opportunity to learn from older guys. Learn, the good and the bad from those guys. And then so he has a lot as far as his on the field and his off the field as well.
All right, there we go. Gerald Chatman diving into the defensive line. But, hey, let's dive in even more. Let's go through what Florida has here. Unlike the offensive line, defensive line, hey, you want to be able to rotate bodies. Now, I won't say you will rotate bodies, because you can have guys playing way too many snaps. And we saw that with Jervon Dexter a couple years ago. I don't think Florida's that dire right now. I think, there are some young players. You heard Gerald Chatman kind of go through those guys. But I think with what you have in front of them, you can with like the Caleb Banks, and especially if Jamari Lyons comes back, your Makai Burrows and your DeAndre Robinsons, I think you don't have to force and make those guys play so many snaps when they're so young. It's a luxury Florida has right now. Now, they still got to create some depth, and it is a question how those guys will perform, but you want to be able to rotate. You want a bunch of bodies on defensive line. So let's just go through it a bit. Caleb Banks, of course. I mean, one of the two most significant returns for the defensive front for the Gators, alongside edge rusher Tyreek Sapp, of course. I mean, getting back Banks and Sapp back together as a combo, ooh, man, that's good for you. That's good. You had that. I mean, you saw in the two biggest games, Florida just needed the wins. Florida needed to turn the season around. Banks, breakout, dominant performances versus LSU and Ole Miss. Had a co-defensive lineman of the week against the Rebels. I mean, finished the season. Guys, this is where you get, when you look at defensive linemen, you don't go by we'll go through the stats here. But it's not all about the stats. You go watch Caleb Banks play and see how important he was. 21 total tackles. You'd have been like, okay, I think as good as he played, he probably would have had more than that. That's not his job. Not completely his job. But if he's getting tackles, okay, that's good. I mean, put it this way. He's got 21 tackles. 10 of them were solo. This is what you want. Out of those 21 tackles, 7 for a loss. A third of his tackles were for a loss. That's what you want to see. 4.5 sacks. 2 forced fumbles. And a recovered fumble in 12 games with 10 starts. Now, of course, a lot of that, and you heard what Chapman said, market consistency, a lot of that toward the end of the season. So let's imagine if we get that type of production all season long. I mean, he set career highs with those 21 tackles. And those 4.5 sacks. He had 29 quarterback pressures, 13 defensive, 29 quarterback pressures. I mean, that's from up the middle. Pretty good. So he improved with 5 more tackles for loss from the season before and 3.5 more sacks than the year before. So if there's another step for Caleb Banks, then it's looking like what he did late season in that late season stretch and replicating that all season long. We want to see that in almost every game in 2025. Now, you're not going to get that. I mean, if you can get that level of play game in and game out, okay, you're talking Caleb Banks just shooting up draft boards, being first-round pick material. Now, does he have that in him? I don't know. But we need to see it. We need to see that a few times in 2025. And we need to see it like it was Ole Miss and LSU. We need to see it in the big games. When it's Miami and it's LSU on the road, and it's Georgia and Jacksonville, Texas coming to the Swamp. That's where we need that type of Caleb Banks to show up. Yeah, I'll take you any other place I can get it. I need to see it in those big games, like we saw versus LSU and Ole Miss. Those big games. We need big game Caleb Banks. Maybe that's what we'll call him. Big game Caleb Banks. Now, I don't want to just have that moniker for him where he only shows up in big games. No, I want him to show up versus Kentucky, and I want him to show up versus your other schools out there too. Look, I can't even name that Mississippi State. Yeah, you can't even name not big name schools hardly on Florida's schedule. If we can say, oh yeah, I wouldn't show like that versus Miami too. No, Miami can be pretty good. LSU can be pretty good. Tennessee can be pretty good. FSU, well, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on FSU. But no, I want Caleb Banks to show up, and we all know in the games that matter. Does every game matter? Sure. Some games matter more than others. Those are the games Caleb Banks needs to be LSU Ole Miss Caleb Banks. Brian Taylor, another senior there. As we kind of just go in order of class here. Your JUCO made 10 appearances in 2024, 14 tackles, 5 of them solo, 2 tackles for loss. He had a quarterback hurry. Got his first start against Texas in place of Banks, who was banged up that week. So, and that was the thing. Remember, Caleb Banks got banged up, didn't play versus Texas, and then came back to those LSU and Ole Miss performances. Keep it going here. Jamari Lyons. There's a pause there. And there's a reason there's a pause there. And Harrison, I'm going to go back to one of your comments, man, because I just saw it. If Lyons comes back the same, our defensive line could be dominant. And there was a reason there was a pause there, Harrison, in Gator Nation. The reason there was a pause there is Jamari Lyons might just be one of my key cogs, key important pieces for this defense, for this defensive front. Now, I ain't saying Florida can't be good without him, but kind of going to Harrison's point here, and now look, that means the offseason talk of him has to be true as well, but just say it is. And he is at least Cam Jackson level, but maybe even better. And I won't say he'd be massively better. I mean, Cam Jackson was playing pretty well. But if you at least get that production out of him, but maybe just a hair better. But if you get that, and that offseason talk last year was any kind of true, I agree. I mean, I think it sets up Florida's defensive line to be pretty special. And to me, it gives a really good combo of Banks and Lyons together. And look, I just think it's so fortunate and so good to see him out there. I mean, you heard Gerald Chatman just talk him up, but him being out there in spring practice now still limited somewhat. But with what we have seen and him moving around and how fast he's moving around and how well he's moving around, I didn't expect that. I mean, there was talk coming into fall camp that or spring camp, that he'd be pretty limited. So from what we're seeing so far, if he can come along, and also mentally now, getting over that broken ankle before the season started in fall training camp, the injury derailed his trajectory. We were hearing so much behind the scenes about Jamari Lyons, and I was trying to share it as much as I on the podcast as I could, because I didn't want it to be much of a shock. I was like, hey, there's one player I was hearing about a whole lot last fall camp. That was Jamari Lyons. So look, that doesn't always pan out. So hopefully it does. But man, you get him in a role in this defensive line right there beside Cam Banks or Caleb Banks. Florida's defensive line should be in good shape. Really good shape. Keeping it going. I mean, look, Cam Jackson, Des Watson are out. I mean, they really need Jamari Lyons to be that guy. Now, look, I don't have much of an issue of having to rely on Mekhi Burrow and DeAndre Robinson. I'd rather not. That's not a shot at them. And I think a lot of this really does go back to what we were hearing about Lyons. Now, if we had never heard that, and Jamari Lyons gets hurt in preseason fall camp, and, I'm sitting here saying, okay, this will probably be a pretty good 3-man battle between Lyons, Robinson, and Burrow. But if Lyons is what we thought we were hearing last year, then it gives you a pretty good 1-2 punch up front, and then you got some guys that can come in and fill in.